so I'm doing something a little different today, which is I am videotaping myself while recording this podcast. And I don't know if I will use the video or not. I don't even know if my battery is going to last me, but I'm gonna try it. So I had this idea. I just got back from this trip to San Francisco, to the city, and I went with this intention to work on my novel because I'm setting the scene of my novel, the environment of my novel is kind of like around the area that I live in. And so I'm taking these different trips to the different parts of the surrounding area of the Bay Area so that I can immerse myself in the environment, see the people watch, like take notes, understand it, feel it, and write from personal experience, which to me is like so much fun. It's such a huge part of my creative drive right now, is actually being in the place that I'm writing about. And so I've been wanting to go there for a while. I haven't been to the city in quite some time, actually, not like longer than just going to the airport or something. So I had this intention. I'm gonna get inspired for my novel. Part of my novel is writing about the year 2047 and this dystopia of what society is. Kind of like, I don't want to give anything too much away. It's not something I'm really talking publicly about yet, but this era that I'm speaking to and creating in my book is like what happens in the future if technology progresses, if AI progresses at the speed that it's going. And anyway, I wanted to go immerse myself. So I booked this trip because my partner had a flight anyway to out of San Francisco to Colorado. And so I was like, cool, I'll drop you off and then I'll go stay for a night in the city and just kind of take notes, and I will immerse myself and see what comes about. And yes, I got what I wanted out of that trip in terms of my novel, but like anything in life, like the best things in life makes us pivot. Life brings us something that we were not expecting. Life gives us sometimes our intention and then some. And that was one of these trips for me. It gave me so much more than I was hoping for. And the reason that I wanted to do a podcast on this was because I really want to share these different pieces of writing that came through me during this trip. And I was trying to think of the context and the format that I wanted to share that in, because this writing feels really vulnerable to me. It feels very, it feels terrifying, actually. And to tell you the truth, I think I've been really missing having something that scares me, having something to create that fucking scares me to put out to the world. And I kept having this thing kind of repeat in my head on this trip, and I don't remember, it wasn't an exact quote, but I follow this one artist who talks a lot about if you're not pushing your edge, if you're not producing art that scares you to share, you're not stretching yourself enough, you're not doing yourself justice. And that stuck with me. And maybe that doesn't feel true to everybody, though I would encourage everyone to sit with that a little bit. It's definitely true for me. And it's like I've been missing a muse. Not just, recently, but like for the last couple years, honestly, probably about 3 years, I have felt my muse dry up. And maybe you can relate to that. It's a shitty feeling, isn't it? To feel like any artist, any writer knows what it feels like when you have a muse and you just feel so turned on and inspired to write or to create around that thing. And then all of a sudden it's like you hit an expiration date. You outgrow that muse. You have kind of like extracted the medicine from that thing. And then life asks you to move on, and you know what it's asking? It's asking us to find a new edge. It's asking us to find that place where we feel ourselves having to stretch what feels comfortable. And I was missing that. It's like I don't even think I've had that before. I had a muse, and it was kind of this spiritual, divine outlook on life. Like my spiritual journey for a lot of time was my muse, and I was writing about the beauty that I saw in everything. It's like I had this gift that actually became a curse in a way, of being able to see beauty in everything. And it is a gift. I will give myself that. It is a gift. I'm not going to take that away. And like any gift, it also comes with a curse. It comes with a little bit of poison. And just like any polarity, when we swing too far to one side, we need to come back and either swing the other way, or we need to find our balance point. Usually we have to swing to both sides to be able to even know what balance is. And so my muse for all these years was this beauty, this just perfection in everything. And it served me. It really did. I would not trade that for the world. And yet it dried up when I moved back here, right at the beginning of when I moved back to California, moved to Sonoma County, came to Movement by Design in this community, and just started this new life and put down roots and started working on my body, not just exercise, not just doing things for, oh, I'm going to try and grow my muscles and yeah, and not yoga. I'm like not just doing it to stretch out and feel good. I'm not doing it for this spiritual reason, although it actually became the most spiritual reason, but it wasn't my intention. Actually, when I came, I didn't even know what my intention was. I was just following an invitation. I was following an intuition. I was following a curiosity, but I didn't have a specific agenda attached to it. And I think that's like the perfect equation for me for where magic happens, is curiosity, but without much agenda. And when I came into this chapter and I started working on my biomechanics and I started actually coming into my body, and man, it's like biomechanics taught me that what I was doing before was nowhere near what I would call embodiment work. It was not even close. And that journey into my body was so fucking sobering. So sobering. And then add Saturn return on top of that. It was like, fuck. It was a very sobering affair. I actually just wrote a poem that I shared about Saturn return on my Instagram. I could write for days on that transit, and I am so grateful for it, and I'm so grateful to be on the other side of it. Thank you, Saturn. He actually rules my chart, so thanks Daddy Saturn for that one. Yeah, I came here at that time, started working on my body, started having to meet the fucking demons of my soul inside of my body that I just was escaping into these higher realms. I was like on this path of ascension and non-duality and enlightenment, and thinking I was so goddamn special and higher than people, and God, I had the biggest fucking spiritual ego. If you've been following me on here, you know. And if you're still following me, thanks for sticking with me through that cringy period. No, I love that version of myself because she got me here. But I'm gonna get distracted because my cat's outside and okay. I came back here. I lost my muse. I was gonna say I got sober, but it's like, I mean, I already wasn't really drinking, and like, but there was so much escapism that it felt like I was high on some kind of drug, and it really was a high. And coming down to earth into my body to work on the shit that I was escaping was not always fun. It was heavy, and it was like work that I had never done before. It was meeting myself, meeting my demons in a way that was so visceral and like thick and heavy for a couple of years. Like, it wasn't some overnight fix. It wasn't this, we're I was gonna say chock full and fucking at the same time. We're chock full in this society of quick fix things. People want to sell us things everywhere we look and turn. It's like, oh, look at this thing, it's gonna help you overnight, or get this body in 2 weeks, whatever. Like, go do this ayahuasca ceremony, it's gonna purge you of everything. No. This season of my life taught me what it means to actually work on something meaningful. And I could do an entire podcast, probably many podcasts on this, but I'm just touching on this. This was a season for me. This Saturn return, these like 2.5 whatever years, was a reality check. times like 1,000. And it was the time when my old muse reached her expiration point. She reached her expiration date. It no longer fed my soul. It no longer connected me to my heart. And to be completely honest with you, I felt oftentimes like I was losing something during this phase, even though in hindsight I was gaining the world. Oh my God, I was gaining so much. But there were times when it felt like I was losing something because I was coming down from a high that I had convinced myself was an identity. That I convinced myself that I was this, I don't even know, spiritual teacher, spiritual guide. Like I was above people because I'd had all these transcendent experiences, because I'd done all these psychedelics and had all these perspective shifts, and I was living in this way that I thought was so much better than people. I had such, what's it called, like a messiah complex. And my muse was attached to all of that. And as I came into my body and started going through all this, I just, every time I tried to write or tried to write through that lens, it just didn't work for me anymore. It was like I had squeezed everything out of it, squeezed all the juice out of it, and I could do it, I could write it well, but it didn't feel rich. It didn't feel full. It didn't feel like me. It didn't feel like it was connected to my heart. And if you are an artist, you know that feeling of when your fucking heart connects to your hands and you feel like you can like walk on water. You feel like you can do anything. You don't give a shit what anybody says about what you're doing because you're so in love with the process. And that is what I was missing. I was missing it so much that I almost forgot what it felt like. It's almost felt as if for those 2.5 years that a part of me went dormant. The part of me that was connected to my heart while I had to sift through all this gunk. And it's not the full truth because I had so much beauty in those years. It wasn't like, I should pause and say, I'm painting it out to sound like it was horrible. It was one of the best seasons of my entire life. And there was a lot of heaviness within it. There was a lot of sifting. There was a lot of meeting triggers there. And I came into relationships, friendships, community that made that process feel so much more easeful than it would have been if I had been still isolated the way that I was when I was such a nomad and traveling all the time. I was so isolated. Even though I was living in these communities, I was so isolated. I didn't have strong, mostly, I had a couple, but most of the time I did not have strong friends around me. It was like me and a partner or just me. Lots of seasons where it was just mostly me, and then events that I would go to, ceremonies that I would go to. And that was just really detrimental to my mental health. And now through the lens of human design and understanding that I'm here for other people and that I'm environmental and that I need this like constant feedback in order to make decisions, man, I can see why things didn't always work out for me. Anyway, back to the story. So that was these last 3 years. Recently, I've been coming out on the other side of this, and yet I'll say I've been coming back into the feeling of connecting my heart to my hands and feeling this like overjoyed sense of creativity. And yet, I still didn't feel like I had a strong muse. It was like I could get up in the morning and I could tap into dance, I could tap into singing, I could tap into spoken word, I do this funny thing in the morning sometimes where I'll turn on my video camera and I'll just walk around my apartment and I'll like mix movement and like dance. I'll just kind of pretend like I have a talk show and I'm like half dancing, half doing comedy, and half just like spoken word poetry, and most of it is absolute nonsense. And I have so much fun. It's not something I post. It is for myself. It is the process of being immersed in allowing myself to be messy as fuck and get it wrong and be like, what the fuck was that, Kaylee? Like that literally came out and was not even in English. But it's so fun, and it gets me into this like joyous, inner child, creative, passionate, heart-centered space where it just fuels me for the rest of the day. And this season of life coming out of my Saturn return was like sloughing off all of this heavy stuff in my energy field and coming back to my heart and rediscovering flow state, rediscovering what it is to be in a creative flow state where you go long enough and you allow yourself to be messy enough where you tap into that rich feeling of just like creation is just moving you. Whether or not it turns out fucking good for anybody else, creation is living you, it's moving you, and you feel so alive. I have this practice in the morning when I'm doing stuff like that, and I have these windows right here that are next to me, and I open them up all the way, and I want to somehow depict this somehow, but I imagine, this is so my Leo sun speaking right now, and I don't even care. I imagine having like this sticker of like this whole audience on my window, and I imagine that I'm just performing. And it's like, there's this thing that I keep coming back to for myself where I say, it's not even a fully developed quote, it's just like an essence, but let me see if I can consolidate it into a quote. The most rich life is one where you are performing for yourself or performing for the God behind your own eyes. To me, that is a feeling of worship. When creativity, when creation and creator merge as one, you know the feeling. I hope you know the feeling. When you are dancing, when you are singing, when you are stream of consciousness, when you're writing, and the act of creation, the verb that is happening, and your sense of identity collapse into one happening, one essence. That to me is the highest form of spirituality. It's like you're just immersed in exactly what the creator, what God, spirit, the universe is wanting to move you through. And you're just lost in your own movie. You don't give a fuck. And it's like you're performing, but it's, if you could see on a spectrum performance and authenticity on the other side, because oftentimes I think that we think that performance is like this fake thing. And oftentimes, yes, performance, the word, it is a fake performance. And yet, there was this awesome documentary. If you have not seen it, go watch it. It's a documentary about Jim Carrey. And he talks about this role that he was playing where he collapsed that duality, where he performed it with every cell of his being to the point where he realized that everything that we are doing is the performance, and when you perform it enough, you fall into authenticity. It's like fake it till you make it. When you fake it enough, when you lean all the way into something, it becomes the reality. I'm not talking about the performance that's like, I'm going to put this mask on and pretend I'm something that I'm not. No. Different type of performance. Try it. Try performing for yourself. Like, there is... if you're an artist, you're like, I don't fucking know what you're talking about. There is an audience. The closest audience that you can possibly imagine is sitting behind your own eyes. It is sitting within your very senses. It is the virtual reality that God put on as your life. That shit is so intimate that when you perform yourself deep enough, you fall into the most authentic state. When you're not worried about what anyone's going to say, when you're not worried about what any of the audience would even say, that's when you become your own audience. And it is fucking magnetic. It turns you on in a way that's, I'm not even talking about like, oh, you're sexually turned on. I'm talking about that turn on that's like your heart is connected to your whole entire body and you're buzzing with aliveness and you have a smile so big and you're stoked to be a human. That's what we're chasing. That to me, God, I'm on so many pivots, but I love it. That to me is what the collective energy, when we talk about spirituality, when we talk about enlightenment, that to me is what the world is asking us for. We're not looking at a phase or a season of life anymore where we're aiming for this like transcendence of like masculine spirituality. These like gurus and masters that we've seen that are just sitting and meditating and their body is fucking falling apart and there's no zest, there's no aliveness, there's just this peace. That's awesome. That's a step. And that was the part that I went heavily towards. And guess what? I came out of it. I reached the place where I was like, oh, I'm not seeing duality anymore. I reached the place where I felt like some semblance of being beyond the ego. And yet, I came out of it. I kept coming out of it. It didn't stick. It would stick for like a day or a couple hours or sometimes a couple weeks. And then I would come out of it. I would start seeing separation again. I would fall back into the illusion that I was this separate person. And now I understand why. It's like my soul did not want to stop there. Fuck no. There is so much more aliveness. There's the femininity, the feminine spirit, the zest, the passion, the aliveness, the being here in form and not rejecting the human body. We're not here to reject the human body. We probably were at some level, at some extent in the past, because the suffering was probably so intense on the planet. The heaviness, the weight to human suffering was probably so dense that transcendence was like the greatest option at that point. And now, energy has shifted. Energy is so different nowadays than it was 10, 20 years ago. Have you noticed? Have you noticed how light things can be? If you're not tuned into all of the fucking heavy shit, if you're actually not avoiding all the shit that you need to actually act on, if you're not avoiding all of your shadows, if you're not avoiding the decisions that you know you need to make, if you're not avoiding yourself, if you're not avoiding your edges, life can feel very, very light right now. And there is a lot of creative potential available to us. Okay, I went on such a tangent there, so I'm going to reel this back in. So, recently, didn't have a muse, had been praying incessantly, asking God for a muse. So many pieces of writing asking for a muse. In fact, so this podcast is going to be one where I tell you the story of me going to the city, and then I read different pieces of writing in between. But there is this one. I'm going to read you guys. So one of my practices at night, my last podcast was about creative blocks and using messy art to move through creative blocks. And I talk about in that podcast how there's this great analogy that I always come back to about a spout of water. If you haven't turned on a spout of water in years, or whatever, months maybe, you turn it on and there's like gunk and dirt that comes out. But if you keep it running, if you keep it going, eventually it turns clear. This is a perfect analogy for what we do as artists. We get afraid of the mess. We have these built-in narratives and belief systems from society, from our family, from our friends, from our relationships that tell us that we should be some form of perfect. That we don't want to get it wrong. We don't want to step on any toes. We don't want to trigger anybody. We don't want to sound foolish. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. We don't want to be canceled, whatever it is. And so we shrink. And that shrinking looks like turning on the tap, being like, ooh, dirt, and then turning it off and walking away and never getting to the purity of that clear water. And that clear water, the analogy, is your soul's creative blueprint. Meaning, your soul came to this fucking planet with a blueprint for creation, for something that you could bring through that nobody else could bring through. Even if you're painting, even if you're drawing, even if you're doing something that is similar to doing something as somebody else, there is an energetic frequency, a tone, a theme, an essence to what you came to do that nobody else on this planet is designed to bring through. It is your medicine. It is your offering. It is your service in whatever way. The thing that lights you up the most is the thing that you are here to share with the world. And that clear water, that's us discovering our authentic creative blueprint. But we can't get to that clear water. We can't get to the purity, the originality, the flow state of who we are. Even, in another sense, it's not even just with art, it's with who we are as a person. You cannot get to that purity and authenticity of who you came to be if you don't allow yourself to fuck up, if you don't allow yourself to make mistakes. And trust me on this, because I was the queen of being terrified of getting something wrong, of being terrified of triggering people. And you know what? If people listen to this entire podcast, and this is probably going to be a longer one, there's probably going to be people who are triggered or annoyed at me or unfollow me, and that is exciting me. For the first time in my life, I'm like, ooh, what does that feel like to have somebody dislike me? I can name one person that I know of that does not like me. And to somebody that might feel like success, but to me that actually feels kind of sad. That feels like it's because I have played small in my life. Because if I was really fucking honest and sharing what I actually thought and being the artist that I wanted to be, I think I would have more people that would at least be uncomfortable in some of the things that I was sharing. that I might trigger, or that I might step on their toes, or that they might unfollow me or post a rude comment. And so I'm setting a new goal for myself. And actually, I shouldn't say it's a goal, because I don't want to make that the goal. I'm just going to say my new edge is going to be sharing writing that could potentially disrupt something, that could make somebody feel something. Not necessarily good, not necessarily bad, but feel something. And isn't that what we are all doing as artists? We want somebody to feel us. Maybe we think that we want to be seen, and maybe that's an aspect of it. But I know for myself, I want to be felt. I want, when somebody thinks about who I am, for them to have a feeling in their body, whatever that is. Maybe it's being triggered and being like, oh, she's way too much, or she's way too outspoken, or she said something fucked up and I don't agree with it. Maybe it's like, wow, I listened to her and I felt more inspired. Whatever it might be, I want to make somebody fucking feel something. I want to make people feel more alive, more sensation in their body. That is my new goal. And my new edge is sharing things that I know could disrupt, that I know could trigger people, and doing it anyway. So that's what this podcast is going to go into, because some of the things that I wrote while I was in the city, and why I'm even telling this story, is that I found a new muse. And I found it in the place that I was not expecting to look or find it. And part of my writing is actually speaking to that, but what I will say is that it was the opposite of my everything is beautiful lens. It was the muse that wanted to martyr. It was the muse that wanted to look at the world and be like, ugh, ew, what the fuck is this? What are we doing here? And we have a lot of stuff. Sometimes I have this perspective where I think, if there were really aliens, which I don't know if there are, but if there were really aliens and they were like a higher dimensional species than us, I imagine them watching humans with like fucking popcorn or whatever they eat and looking at us and just being like, what the fuck? Because we are such an immature species. We are so low on the totem pole of intelligence at this point in our society, and you can see it everywhere. If you just go out and people watch, majority of people are overweight, unhealthy, ugly, and not ugly because, oh, you're born that way, but ugly because they made a lot of shitty decisions that made them ugly. Ugly energies. There's not a lot of like real, authentic, beautiful people in the world. It's just the truth. It's not a moralistic view. It's just when you look out, that's what you see. Any person can look out and see, no matter how fucking smart or stupid you are. You can go out there and look at the world and see that. And don't get me wrong here. I am the queen of finding the silver lining. I will find beauty in everything. Without even trying, I will find the beauty even in the fucking flaws, the imperfections, everything. And this season of my life is about looking at the world and writing about what I see that is not necessarily beautiful or artistic. And yet, in that process, I am finding so much creative zest. So that's what this podcast is about. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. We're living on the edge here, guys, because my laptop is on red, and I think my iPad is too. So we're going to see if we're going to make it. I was going to read you something that I wrote about praying for a muse, but I think I'm going to skip over that because I have enough to read on this podcast already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about my journey into the city. I love telling stories so much. I feel so at home in storytelling. So I planned this trip kind of not so spontaneously. Like a couple days before I went, I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to turn this into a little trip for myself. My boyfriend needs to go to the airport. I'm going to drop him off. I'm going to book a night in the city because I needed to go anyway for research, and I'd been putting... Oh, side tangent here. I was avoiding my book like the plague. There was a season of life, probably 6 months ago, where I was working diligently on world building, because this novel is kind of fantasy realism, think like modern day Harry Potter type book. I was world building like crazy, and I love world building. This is my first book that I've ever written, and I've always been really good at planning things out. Like I would plan courses that I was going to do and podcasts that I was going to do and all this different content that I used to make. That was my jam. But then what I learned is that my place of discomfort, my edge, is the actual writing, and I was avoiding it like crazy. I would write just enough to be able to tell myself the story that I wrote some. You know that excuse? My other artists out there, you know that excuse where you're like, oh yeah, I'm writing a book. And your fucking book is like 2 pages long and you've written like a sentence or two every time you sat down. Or you're like, yeah, I'm working on a poetry book, and you haven't written poetry in like a month. Yeah, that's where I was at. I was avoiding. And sometimes you can get so good at avoidance that you don't even realize you're avoiding. That's the really scary part. So hopefully you're surrounded by people who call you on your bullshit like I am. So anyway, I recently came into this beautiful woman who inspired the fuck out of me. Her name's Florence Gibbons. She has a huge following on Instagram, and I find these role models in my life that come in and they have like a certain type of energy that I need in that season. And she was my permission slip to dream way bigger for myself, to set bigger goals, and to be way more audacious with my personality, which I'm still playing with. But don't worry, it's gonna come out, and I can feel it. So anyways, she had this podcast, and it was about how to set goals that are so audacious that they turn you on and terrify you, essentially. And I left listening to that podcast so fucking inspired that I was like, I'm gonna set a goal that scares me, and it has to do with my novel, and I'm not gonna share it because this one is about me, and I don't want it to be about anybody else. But it was about writing, like the actual writing, because I felt like I could get lost in world build for probably years. And I'm pretty sure that's what, I think his name's J.R.R. Tolkien, right? Maybe I'm getting the name wrong, but the man who wrote The Lord of the Rings, I'm pretty sure that he world built for years, and I could see myself being somebody who could do that. It's very easy because every time you answer another question, there's like 5 more questions that come from that, and you're like, oh my god, I'm drowning in how much I could go into. So I set this goal for myself, and I was like, cool, perfect timing, I'm gonna go to the city. Booked this night at the city. That day, dropped them off at the airport, went to my Airbnb, got there, dropped my stuff off, and I was fucking exhausted. Like, and that is a whole nother reason, is I just got into homeopathy, and there's this new remedy that I was taking, and so my exhaustion was insane. And old me would have been like, I'm on a time crunch, I'm in the city, there is so much to do, I'm gonna go drink, I don't know, coffee or something that stimulates me and go take in the city, I'll sleep later. New me was like, I know myself, and I am always, 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 always rewarded in some way, shape, or form internally when I rest when I need it. And so I was like, I am going to make myself feel luxurious and take a nap. So got out of my clothes, closed down all the windows, got in this bed, and oh my god, chef's kiss. This bed was like the luxury of Airbnb beds, and I just got in there, fell asleep, took a little cat nap, got up, and was like, okay, what do I want to do with my time here? And I don't know about you guys, but if you know anything about human design, I'll probably be talking about that on and off in my podcast. And if you don't, feel free to disregard or look into it deeper, which I highly recommend. One of the probably 3 biggest tools in my life that have transformed me: human design, biomechanics, homeopathy. Those are the top 3 right now. Actually, I take that back. I have to add into there probably the either the top one or tied for second would be finding a man, a real fucking masculine man who can lead you and who you can surrender to. That has been the biggest game changer in my life, next to biomechanics. I digress. I could get on a soapbox for a long time on any one of those. And I just got off on a tangent. Anyway, got in bed, was napping, woke up, was like, okay, yes, I'm gonna go out. Oh, I know. I was gonna plan. I was like, oh, I know what I was gonna say. Human design. I'm a mental projector, meaning most of my centers are open, and my head and my root are open. So there is oftentimes a lot of changing pressures. And time pressure is a real thing that I have dealt a lot with in my life, especially when I am alone. And when I'm by myself, I also have no inner authority. I have environmental authority as a mental projector. And so when I'm by myself and I'm not able to sound something out with people, or like have somebody kind of prompt me or ask me questions, it can sometimes get a little bit chaotic, which is why I made my own oracle deck to help me with that, which has been a huge godsend. And I used it this day. I pulled a couple cards. But what I had been doing, which I find hilarious now, is that I have, since ChatGPT came out, actually no, I probably got on the bandwagon a little later than most people, but I use it a lot. I'm going to be honest. And I see people's posts all the time about like, oh, it's depriving our creativity and blah, blah, blah. And I think that I'm going to do a podcast on the pros and cons of that at some point in the future, because I do see the cons in a huge way. And I also see how much of a huge time saver it is in so many ways, and how much it can help the creative process and enhance our creativity. But what I think we need with it is boundaries and discernment. And that is something I'm still exploring. But anyway, I've had this like, I love ChatGPT kind of mindset. And this was an experience these 2 days where I realized just how much it can also hinder us. And I was spending so much time after my nap trying to plan out all of these aspects of my day and like find the perfect place to go write, find the perfect place to eat, find the perfect place to people watch. And I was asking all these questions, and I paused at this one point and I was kind of laughing at myself, just going like, Kaylee, you know that you thrive when you allow yourself to get lost in places like San Francisco. And I don't mean lost like down a ghetto in a sketchy place, but lost in a safe area. But I have found so much magic in my life, like ridiculous amounts of magic, by allowing myself to wander in cities where I do not know how to get around and letting my intuition guide me. When I used to live in Berkeley, I never really fully learned like the geography of everywhere, and I kind of purposefully let myself not, because I loved getting lost. I would do this all the time, whether it was a whole day, whether it was just an hour. I would turn my maps off and be going on the freeway, and I would just be like, body, show me where I need to go today, with no agenda. Sometimes I would ask a question, but most of the time I would just follow my body, blasting music in my car. This was a time period in my life where I had just let go of all of my closest friends because we went separate ways. It was like the beginning of my spiritual awakening back in like 2019. It was such a good season. It was so empowering, and this practice became a part of my life where I would just follow my intuition, and I would go down random streets and I would get all of these messages and synchronicities and answers to the questions that I had and content, and I just was, it was such, that was my muse. It was like life was my muse. I was so high on life. And actually, looking back, this is probably one of the most correct seasons that I had, minus a couple things that were just not working. But for where I was at in life and still being this like double three energy, again, human design reference, but everything was supposed to be trial and error at that season in my life. And so nothing was really supposed to work. And yet this season, this like year that I was living in Berkeley, was so rich and like what felt like success to me. Oh God, I could go on so many tangents, so many different stories, so many different life experiences. But I lost my train of thought again. Okay, yes. So had this thought of like, Kaylee, stop using ChatGPT. Just go explore. So what I did was I brought my oracle deck with me. I pulled a few cards. I pulled Play with Clay, because I love working with clay. I pulled that one, which I was like, what the fuck? I didn't bring any clay with me. I guess I'm going to have to find an art store. And again, wanted to search and find an art store to go to, because I had this time pressure of like, I only have 2 days. I don't want to waste my time. I want to make sure that I squeeze everything I can out of it. And I had to let that go. And luckily I have a really strong trust muscle built from how many years I have traveled and how many years I have spent wandering aimlessly and letting my intuition guide me, and just the universe showing up over and over and over again in the most amazing and magical ways. So I pulled Play with Clay. I pulled, what did I pull? Fuck. Oh my god, I'm gonna forget. Okay, maybe it'll come to me later. Anyways, I pulled these cards to kind of help me guide my journey. And then my idea was that I was gonna get on public transit. I was gonna get on the MUNI. And I was just going to head towards the Embarcadero, and I was gonna people watch through the windows. I love riding public transit when I am traveling somewhere. There's something about it that allows my mind to have so much inspiration, and I love just putting my headphones in and just going into my own little world. And I have so many amazing memories traveling between Guatemala and Mexico and Costa Rica for 3 years, from like 2020 to 2020, no, 2019 to 2022 or something like that. So many amazing memories of public transit doing this. And so that was my idea. It was like, I don't want to drive. I hate driving in the city. I don't have to worry about parking. I just want to take in as much as I can and follow my intuition. So have this idea in my head. And funny enough, before I got to the city, I do this thing where I have, like, I have my songs on my Spotify playlist on shuffle, and I'll press next, and I'll just ask, what is the theme of this trip, or what is the theme of this day? And I ask the song to give me a message. So I did that before I had gotten to the Airbnb, and the song that came on was called Salt in My Blood. And immediately I had this contraction. Immediately I had this like fear come up of like, shit, does that mean I'm gonna be irritated, or like something bad's gonna happen? Which says a lot right there, right? That experience of seeing the word salt in my blood and having a contraction immediately shows me what limiting beliefs I have around like saltiness, pessimism, feeling irritated. I have this belief that that's wrong or bad, or I have this fear around feeling that. And I kind of let it go. It wasn't too big of a deal. It wasn't like it ruined my mood or anything. I was just kind of like, okay, I wonder how that's going to come through, but I definitely had a contraction. What about my day? So here I am getting on the MUNI, and first thing that happens here is that I'm walking with this like bullseye, I'm like trying to get there in time. I have a few minutes to catch it, I think, and this guy starts talking to me as I'm walking. He's like, you have something on your slipper. First of all, it's not a slipper, it's a fucking sandal. He's like, sometimes like British people say things like that and it's cute, but this guy was just American. I'm like, what the it's not a slipper, it's a fucking sandal. So first off, what? Second of all, don't talk to me when I'm on a mission. Third of all, pretty sure I had fuck off plastered on my forehead, because I usually do in spaces like that because I don't want to be talked to. Third of all, what is with men and using shitty pickup lines, especially when the rhythm and timing is so off? Like, just no. Just no. So this guy's like, you have something on your slipper. So I look down at my feet like, okay, I must have something on my shoe. Thanks for telling me, I guess. I was looking down thinking I was going to look at my shoe and have like toilet paper sticking to it, right? Didn't have anything. And I look up and he tries to turn it into this like, oh, you're so beautiful, like, and I like didn't even stop really. I just kept walking and laughed and was like, haha, no. Anyways, so get to the station, waiting there, get on the MUNI, and this is where I'm going to share with you my first piece of writing, because it does a better job of describing it than I will. Because what I was expecting to find in the city was not at all what I received, and yet it was so much better. So that's where we're starting today. I'm just back a little bit so I can... Funny, I paused it and realized that there's so much of the audio that's being like dropped out, so we're just going to use it as a video, so no more headphones. Okay, bear with me. I have not read these out loud yet, so if I stumble over my words a little, the reason is I have a lot of things like crossed out and like, little scribbles. So the point here was not for perfection. The point of this podcast video was to tell a whole story and let it be really raw. I wanted to take you along with me. So I hope that you get to see that. And this one is me writing the first thing that I wrote on my trip. And it was after I came back from my trip on the MUNI, and I'm sitting in the middle of Castro Center, and there's just, like, the wind is blowing, and the energy of everything just feels fucking chaotic. Okay. I hope no one talks to me. That's what goes through my head as I sit down in Castro Center to write. I'm sitting on a rainbow. Literally, the sidewalk underneath me is screaming brightly in paint. Just like every waving, whipping flag in the wind everywhere I look once I arrived. Just like the rainbow balloons, drinks, posters, t-shirts, and advertisements everywhere you turn here. And don't get me started on the people. I'm supposed to be here writing the first part of my novel, The Dystopia of the City in 2047. But it's only 2026, and it's clearly already here. Everyone is celebrating a mass loss of polarity in our culture. And where is the pride in that, I wonder? Somehow I don't feel it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-gay. I don't dislike anyone just because of their sexual preference. The thing is, I see the bigger picture unfolding here. I see patterns at play. And it has nothing to do with morality. They're not subjective. They're energetic. They're objective. Pause. Tangent. Okay, here's the thing. I've spent many years, the first 30 to be exact, being the writer who wrote pretty things. Beauty and spirit were the fuel behind my pen. I wore rose-colored glasses and God was my muse, and I found art in just about everything. My identity as a writer became tied to optimism, to a view of reality that felt like rainbows everywhere. And to tell you the truth, I think I was really struggling in many ways. And that became my escape. I built a world in the clouds where I could find beauty and divinity in anything. And for that time, it served me. Kept me safe in a world that I didn't yet know how to navigate as myself. But lately, my writing lost its spark. The things I used to write about no longer felt as real to me as they once did. My words wilted inside me before they ever touched a page. My heart wasn't in it. It felt like a performance of a scene I'd already walked away from. Life wanted me to change scenes. Not only that, but roles, costumes, and stages. It wanted to hand me an entirely new production, and yet I kept moonwalking backwards, trying to force the costume back on. But it was as if it had shrunk. It had belonged to a smaller version of me, and I'd outgrown it. And with every attempt to go backwards, to fit that old costume on, I'd feel the seams ripping, and I realized I had to drop it. It was no longer the era of capturing solely beauty and optimism. It wasn't even the era of finding the perfect rhythm or words. It was the era of truth. The era of letting my writing be more raw and unedited, more blunt than feel good. I was no longer the good little people pleaser who never rocked the boat. I was, well, I don't know yet. And I think that's why we write, right? Why any artist arts, to discover who it is that we are. Or maybe to find an intimacy with ourselves that mirrors back the season that we're in, when we ourselves can't find a definition. So here I am, sitting in San Francisco, the city that used to excite all of my senses, the city of adventure, the place that used to carry so much charm. And I get here and immediately felt one word: disgust. Pessimism doesn't yet feel like a home to me, yet I'm learning more and more that it is a huge part of my design. It's the costume I've chosen in this life, and I don't want to push it away anymore. Maybe there's art, even magic there too, that isn't the same kind that we find in optimism. But how can I know if I don't dive headfirst in and explore and find out for myself? So yes, disgust. It's what filled my body as I got here. My nose scrunched up like a little kid smelling a food they don't want to eat. And that was exactly it. I didn't want to eat it. My aura, projector, hi, didn't want to absorb it. Didn't want to take it in. Everything felt dirty. As I rode the Muni through the city to take notes for my novel, the worst smells drifted through the air. Hordes of people huddled together way too close for comfort. A sense of urgency running like an undercurrent beneath the collective, as if the city and all its people were running on too much coffee, lack of sleep, and bottled up emotions and words that they won't say and decisions that they refuse to act on. And all the energy wanted to bubble up inside me and explode. In what? I don't know. A tornado? A tantrum? Screams of anger? I'll tell you this. It felt like anything but rainbows. Ironic, huh? Society is a house of cards built from pretense. And the scary thing is, there's not much anchoring it. Nothing really holding it together. This city is running on survival mechanisms. A homeless man behind me is screaming angrily at anyone that passes by. Some people are looking at him with a condescending tone behind their eyes. But you know what? I bet those same people are running the same programs. Theirs just don't come out as reactivity. Society rewards repression, but at least that guy's not pushing it down, constipated with words that he didn't feel worthy of admitting. People call men like that crazy, but we look at the man in a nice suit with a good job, too overweight to even see his own dick, and say he's something of a success. We praise his put-togetherness, his poised performance that holds beneath it 100 inconvenient truths he pretends not to know. 1,000 triggering moments he forced himself to swallow his tongue and say everything was fine. His belly full of the disgust he feels as he goes to sleep at night, knowing he's cheated himself as a man. Funny enough, I am more disgusted with him than the bellowing man behind me. At least I know how he feels. It may not be pretty, it may not be healthy, but at least on some level he's being honest. He's angry, and everyone knows it. He's insane, possibly, and everyone knows it. That man in the suit, in a way that's scarier. In a way, that's a scarier insanity. The kind that bubbles beneath the surface for years like a volcano, but eventually, that energy has to go somewhere. And that's what I feel in this city. A whirlwind of energy vortexing to a breaking point, bubbling like a pent-up volcano beneath the surface of forced smiles and fake words. It feels like an energy of static. And when I ask what it's coming from, the message I get is confusion. But confusion isn't the body's experience, not really. It's what happens in the mind when someone isn't digesting life correctly. Digestion equals understanding. And when I say confusion is what's creating the static in the field, I don't mean the kind of confusion like I don't know the answer to the math problem. I mean a true confusion of identity, an inability to understand who you are. And how do you understand who you are? By living correctly, by making decisions that are correct for you, that make you feel loved and healthy. Think about it in terms of animals. A cat is going to have a different way of moving through the world than a monkey. The way it decides what to eat, which way to go, where to live, depends on a different set of factors, a different body system, different senses, different bone structures, different movements. Understanding oneself comes from standing under oneself. Yes, it's that literal. Think about it this way. If a cat looked at the monkey and tried to mimic it, started eating what it ate, trying to swing through the trees, attempting to sound like it, it would create the energy beneath the word confusion. Static. Then add self-consciousness and an inner critic to that analogy. That cat would literally go insane. It would be sick, in pain, its vocal cords would hurt, and its digestion would suck, and it would dislike itself and feel confused as hell. Why? Because it's not standing under itself. It's not understanding the world through the correct lens. It's confused about its identity. Now look at the world and the puppet show of people who are just trying on identities crafted by other people, trying to pretend their way to happiness, trying to understand themselves through the wrong lens. Go to a city, any highly populated city, and people watch for a day, an hour, whatever. Notice what you see, the expressions, the words, the outfits, the noises, and then notice what you feel underneath all of it. Does it feel like coherence or confusion? Does it make you more proud or disappointed in humanity? Does it feel like rainbows or rock bottom? And I guess the silver lining in that, even in the loss of polarity, in the mass confusion of who we are as individuals and collective insanity, ironically, that this dark night of the soul is the polarity that becomes the pendulum swing into a society that finally finds out who we are. Okay, so this was the first thing that I wrote. And as I was writing this, the wind was blowing around me. It was like, felt like I was in the middle of a tornado. And it felt like the environment was responding to what I was feeling inside. And in the middle of me writing this man, this is the way my next piece that I'm going to share with you starts, but I look up and this man is fully naked in front of me, 100% naked, like butt ass naked. And I was just like, oh, so taken aback. And I was so into my writing that I was like, I am just going to keep writing. Like, I'm not going to do anything. He's putting his clothes on. He didn't even look crazy. I'm going to read you what I wrote about that one. But this was the first thing that I wrote, and I felt myself meeting my muse. Meeting the muse that I had been praying about. Meeting the muse that I had been desiring and craving, that feeling of like, oh, something, my heart is connecting to my hands. And it felt so real. And I realized that, again, human design reference, third line mind, here to see the pessimism, here to see what's not working. I had pushed that so far away in my life. My dad, rest in peace, Daddy. My dad and my sister, when I was younger, were both very pessimistic. They're also both third line. My sister's a third line body, my dad's a third line mind. They were both third lines, and they were always very vocal about their pessimism. And I hated it. I was a double 3. When I'm a 3-6, my 6th line was still a third line up until my Saturn return. So that meant 2 3s. Should have been extremely pessimistic. Trial and error, everything doesn't work, bumping into shit, just nothing works. But I saw that pessimism and I hated it. I was like, can't somebody just see the fucking silver? Like, can't somebody put me in a good mood? I had enough shit that I was dealing with. I was like, somebody be optimistic. And so I became an optimist. I became the thing that I was not. And thank God for that mechanism in me, because it saved me. I think it got me through those 30 years. The things that we think are fucked about ourselves, they serve a purpose. And that escape, though it does not work for me anymore, worked for a while. And in this season of life, I realized that I was still clinging to that optimism. I was still clinging to wanting to see the world through these rose-colored glasses. I wanted to be this ray of sunshine. I wanted to be just this happy-go-lucky woman who, could find the silver lining in everything and was optimistic about everything. And my body is still very much that way. Like, that is the way I experience the world, that everything is kind of just perfect. And yet, my mind is here to analyze and see what is not fucking working, what's broken. And I was pushing that away so much, and I didn't even know it until I let this come through me, until I let this disgust, this truth move me into action, into writing from that place. And what happened was that even though I was writing about disgust, I was writing and it didn't rhyme, or it didn't have, the same cadence or the same beauty that my old writing did, it felt beautiful because I was allowing my authentic self to speak. And I think that as artists, as writers, if we don't have a practice, because I don't need to share all that with the world to know that it moved me. And in fact, I wrote all of this a while ago, and I've just been sitting on it because a part of me was like, do I need to even share it? But then another part of me is like, you do. It's part of the journey. But we need to have a practice as artists that is just for us, that is honest as fuck. The more honest that you can be with yourself in your art, the more honest that you will become in your life, and the quicker that you will get to that pure water in terms of your creativity. So I'm going to read you the next one that I wrote. I'm just going to go on a little journey here. So here we go. I wrote this the next day, I wrote this one while I was at brunch. I'm going to tell the whole story. I went to brunch the next day. The first day was my third line day. The second day was my 6th line day. Meaning the first day was very pessimistic. Everything sucks. People suck. Society sucks. Writing about all of it. Loving all of it. Second day, everything was beautiful. And yet I was still writing from this lens because I was so in love with it. In love with this new muse. I could not stop writing. It was like just pages and pages and pages. And I was just, I could have just sat in the city for days and just written. I'm like, man, I want to go back already. There's so much to see. There's so much content. Okay. Yesterday I looked up from writing about the disgust I feel in this city to see an old man, fully naked, in the middle of the Castro. To be fair, he was in the process of dressing himself. But what? Do you ever feel like you just landed in the middle of somebody's movie? In some crazy scene with no lead in, no prologue, nothing that gives context clues to what the actual fuck is going on? It's like opening a book that you've never read to the very middle and starting to read. This man wasn't homeless. He didn't even look unhealthy. And I don't know if that makes this better or worse. But what must be going through his mind to let yourself and your entire body be seen in the middle of the day, in the middle of a populated city like that? I think back about myself 4, 5, 6 years ago. I think about how I used to live in communities where nudity was seen as simply natural, where the belief was that our bodies were beautiful and nothing to be ashamed of. Shame meant hiding, and I thought I had carried the weight of so much body shame in my life that to hear a narrative for the other extreme felt, well, liberating, enticing, rebellious. So I swung to the other side of the pendulum, thinking that that would absolve my shame, that if I could somehow let my body be seen in its total vulnerability, that it must mean that I'd be free, that I was no longer holding that shame. And the thing is, there is a certain extent of self-discovery and healing that we get from traversing each side of a pendulum and a polarity, exploring the edges of extremes, but only long enough until we realize that truth doesn't live there, and sustainability doesn't either. But for a while, I played in the deep end of a shallow pool, swimming in beliefs that I was free, because I lived off-grid, spent my days frolicking in nature, sitting in ceremonies, ditched the 9-to-5 rat race. I was dancing my heart out under the Guatemalan skies, singing to the lake, preaching online about the freedom I'd found. Braless and careless, I posted videos and photos showing my naked body, convinced that it was my job to inspire others still trapped in the patriarchal American nightmare, to realize how free they were really able to feel. I'm not proud of a lot of behaviors that I used to have, but there is something that I am proud of. I'm proud that I allowed myself the chance to explore life, to sell my car, let go of my favorite home I'd ever had, and book a one-way ticket to Central America with very little money in my bank account, but a heart on fire for life. My intuition asked me to leap, and I did, without a single hesitation. And I'm proud of my willingness to take a risk, to trust fall into life even when I had no idea what would happen. I'm not proud of letting people see my body who didn't even earn that right. And I'm still cleaning up the energetic leaks of a phase of life that cost me a lot of depth and intimacy. Sometimes, hiding has nothing to do with shame, and everything to do with reverence, containment, sanctity. Over the years, I have realized that my body is far more a secret garden than a public park. I have come to the conclusion only by stumbling down the sidewalks of a world that didn't work. But I have come to that conclusion only by stumbling down the sidewalks of a world that didn't work. By reaching the dead end of my belief that I was free, only to admit to myself where I wasn't. So as I watch this man, mid-movie, my judgment softens into understanding. For if someone had opened the page in my life novel to the free spirit I used to be, they might wonder what on earth I had been thinking too. So, I remember the card that I had pulled in my deck. It was the play with clay one, and then it was liquids only, see what comes up, meaning no more meals that day, just liquids. This card I always pull when I need it, but imagine you're in a city for one night. One of the main things that you probably want to do is to take yourself out to dinner, or to go out and eat, and right, we have so much of our lives is centered around food, and myself personally have struggled with food issues a lot in my life, and to take that big core piece of the trip away was so needed, and that's why I wrote on this card, see what comes up. And that night I had told myself, like, oh, I'm just gonna do liquids during the day and then I'll let myself eat dinner. But dinner rolled around and I was so fed. Like, I was so nourished by my writing, by my spirit, by the feeling of connecting to your passion in your heart and just expressing, that I was like, I'm actually not hungry. I feel great. I'm going to go to bed early. I'm just going to go and write. So I came home and I started my goal towards my novel. This was my first day of my big goal. And it felt amazing. And I felt myself accessing the beginning of this. I'm not in it fully yet, but I could feel myself reaching through that muddy water and sensing that pure, clean flow, like my zone of genius. And that it takes so much devotion to get there. So much devotion to get there. So next part of the story. I went to go to bed early that night. I'm like, I don't need to eat. I feel amazing. I felt so good. So the next day I wake up and I felt really alive. Like I just had the world at my fingertips. And I started doing the thing on ChatGPT. Oh, I missed one little fun part. The day before, the card that I had pulled around clay, on my way back from the Muni, when I was going back to my car, my body I just walked around for a little while, I was wandering, and all of a sudden my body just turns and walks into this store, and it looked like a tourist store, like something I would never usually go into, and I was like, why am I walking in here? I walk to the back of the store, and there's an art section with clay. So that just felt like this lovely little wink from God at the end of my day that was like, oh, of course I don't need to plan so much. And yet, the next day, once again, I went to ChatGPT and was trying to find the perfect place to write, the perfect cafe. I was like, oh, I'm loving my writing. I want the perfect spot. And again, I got into this trap of being like, you know what? I'm trying to control too much. I'm so used to surrendering to my partner's direction and guidance and like, oh, we're like, you don't need to think about anything. I know where we're going. I'm just there and surrendered to him, that when I go somewhere alone, I'm like, there's so many possibilities. Where is the masculine grounded, like, directive force? And I was trying to create that with my mind, was not working. Not only did it just get me anxious, but ChatGPT actually told me a bunch of incorrect information, so I'm glad that I didn't listen to most of it. But in the end, I found one restaurant that I was like, this one's calling to me. I'm just going to let everything else go and see what the universe brings me, because I was trying to find, like, I was being ridiculous. I was being so high maintenance. I was like, I want the perfect cafe with comfy couches, with places where I can people watch. I want to be outdoors in the sun. I want to have coffee that has Strauss milk. I want good milk. I want good quality coffee. Not decaf coffee. I don't drink caffeine, but and all these things I was trying to find. And I was like, I'm going to find the perfect... I let it go. I was like, whatever. And I go to this restaurant. It's called The Plow, I think, or Plow. And I get there, and I'm going to read you a little bit that I wrote here, but I think this tells the whole story, so I don't think I even need to say anymore. Table for one, I say with no hesitation. Zero shame. Today is one of those I'm the main character of my movie kind of days. Not in a show-off type of way, but in the energetics of how I hold my spine when I walk through a city whose energy begs me to curl inwards and match its smallness. I will not. Table for one. Outdoors, in the sun, please. Yes, I'll wait 30 minutes. I walk down the steep streets. They pull me into momentum, but I'm stopped by a sign on a telephone pole that says, "What is constant?" It's the most real and spiritual thing I've seen so far. I slow my pace, tracing my way back to what never ceases, to that which is always here and witnessing. And in my watching, I catch the little decisions, the little details. And this 30-minute wait for a table is suddenly full of little winks from God. I find a coffee shop within walking distance that is exactly what I've been wanting, and had spent half an hour trying to find on ChatGPT with no luck. I smile, ordering decaf, which feels like a rebellion in a city running on caffeine. I lick whipped cream from the top like I'm 5, and bask in the sun, appreciating the simple pleasures. Headphones in, pen in hand, people watching, a million possibilities ahead of me, on the page and in life. A little bird hops around me, picking up seeds, and I smile. To a writer, 30 minutes is not a wait, but a tiny wonderland. So then I get this table, and it's this table at this restaurant, and it's just, it's so perfect. It's like the corner table outside where I have a perfect view of everybody. Bright sun. I can kick up my shoes, my feet. I feel like, I know people have a weird thing about like going to dinner or going to lunch by themselves. I used to be like that when I was younger, but I felt like I was a statement. Like I felt like I was walking around like everyone should allow themselves to do this shit, to just like romance themselves, to date themselves, to go somewhere and just write. And like I could feel the pressure of, oh, these people are probably waiting on tables and I should rush through it, and who am I to take up space when it's only me and I'm not even with anybody, and what are they gonna think? And I was like, no, I am gonna sit here and write and soak up this perfect spot for as long as I want. And so I did. I didn't stay an obnoxious amount. I feel like there's an edge. There's a line to walk there where you also do want to be considerate. But I realized that I was trying to rush through things at first because I was like, oh, people are waiting. As if me being alone is less worthy of taking up time and space than the people who are in a group or in a couple or whatever. So, I'm going to read. Where is it? Where is it? Okay. Might lose some people here, we'll see. 2 lesbian women are waiting in line at the restaurant I'm at. One of them is caressing the other, massaging her arms, stroking her hair, whispering to her what looks like very lovingly. There are moments that I love my 3-6 design. 3rd line mind, pessimist, sees what's not working. 6th line body, optimist, feels and sees the beauty, divinity, and perfection of what is without needing it to change. My 6th line feels love, companionship, care. As I watch them, I sense that they share a bond that feels like it's been a lifeline. Maybe it's been a safe haven, one they were given in tough times. Maybe she was the woman who finally understood the other after years of not being seen. Maybe she was the gift God gave her after a traumatic experience. Maybe she was the calm, safe space after an abusive relationship. Maybe. My 3rd line interrupts the rose-colored glasses that I'd slipped on as I leaned into their world and my own wonderings. Yes, and, she says. My inner martyr pulls her chair up to the table and straightens up in her seat. Yes, no doubt there is love, care, companionship. But you know what I don't see? Polarity. Friction. I see 2 friends wishing there was more spark than there is. I see sameness. Honestly, I see performance. And not even performance for the world, but performance for themselves. The kind you use to prop up a story that doesn't really feel real. I'll probably offend some people with that statement, if they assume that I'm saying all gay people are pretending, and I didn't say that. I'm not anti-gay, not at all. I'm not pro-gay either, and you certainly won't find me waving a rainbow flag in celebration. If people are genuinely happy, I think that's awesome. It's also none of my business, which is hilariously ironic considering the LGBTQ has made their sexuality everyone's business. I'm just here to share what I see beneath the exuberance of rainbow-stricken streets, what I see under the loud declarations of pride, and for me, my seeing comes from feeling. My design, 3-6 mental projector, fully open G-center, feeling cognition, allows me to sit in an environment and feel the quality, the health, the identity, the flaws, the emotionality, and then speak my mind. Somewhere within me, feeling and seeing merge. What I see is a lot of masks, performance, superficiality, in the city as a whole, not just in the LGBTQ community. What I feel is a background frequency of people urgently racing to get somewhere that they don't really want to be. I feel a collective that doesn't know how to sit still long enough to notice their own discomfort with their lives. I feel the confusion that exists when people see everyone smiling and yet feel everyone running on fight or flight. I see a society swimming in the shallow end but longing for depth. A world that craves connection but is lost, looking outward instead of inside of themselves. I see more people absorbed in their screens than in their senses. And it makes me wonder if curiosity and polarity are buried in the same graveyard. might be it. God, I've written so much lately. It's crazy. That was good. I think that's it for today. Yeah, that feels complete to me. This has gotten very long. Thank you. If you made it to the end, thank you for sticking with me through that whole story and arc line. That was actually such a gift internally, just to kind of relive that through words in myself and revisit and just kind of feel the energy that's been sitting with me since that experience. I guess the note that I will leave this on is just to summarize the importance of two things that I've already said. One, finding a practice where you can flow. I really believe that the reason that so much came to me recently and I found this new muse is because I had this devotion to messy art recently. Every night before bed, I've just been pouring into my journal without editing anything, just like brain dumping, whether it's poetry or whether it's just gibberish or whatever. And then I've been trying to do that in other ways too, whether it's through dance or through singing or through spoken word. Whatever it is, finding something where you can let that muddy water run clear. Be your own muse. If you're looking for life to hand you a new muse, be the muse first, and that external one will come. Meaning, inspire yourself. If you think about it, like, if you think about yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the highest potential you could imagine, what are the decisions that that version of you would be taking now? What are the decisions that if you made, you would hit the pillow at night feeling like $1,000,000? Or you'd wake up in the morning feeling fucking amazing because you knew that you made those decisions that were not only healthy for you, but turned you on to life. The places that you're avoiding in yourself are where the deepest magic is hiding. If there's an edge for you in your art, something that scares you, lean into that. If there's a place that you're avoiding in your art, lean into that. And if you're somebody who feels like they lost their spark or they're hitting a creative block, listen to my last episode because I went into depth on a lot of this as well. But I'm going to leave that there. Thanks so much for traveling with me today. I'll see you guys in the next episode.